Hello, welcome to the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. In today's video, we're going to look at the new Akai update to the beta version 3. Some familiar additions and some new features. Let's jump in. Okay, first things first, hats off to Akai. These updates are coming thick and fast, and it seems that they're listening to the community. I know I made a few requests and reported a few bugs. Speaking to people in the community on forums and through my channel, I know that they reported some bugs and they made some requests, and Akai have listened. They've brought back something that we all love and that a lot of people use. They've kind of given us a new feature in a kind of different way to what we had before. And there's just been some under the hood fixes as well. Now, ultimately, for me, what I love, I love the new features, and I love the reintroduction of things that were in the previous firmware that we'd momentarily lost. But what I love is it seems that Akai are doing things underneath the hood as well. They're pushing the MPC hardware to its limits. They're getting the most out of the RAM that's on board. They're improving the algorithms, and all that stuff is going on underneath the hood. So initially it might not seem like they're really doing very much, but it seems like they actually are. I mean, one of the new features which they have pushed forward in their marketing for the new update is quicker sample loading. And whilst that, you know, initially you just think, oh great, quicker sample loading. So, you know, it just seems like a surface thing, but underneath the hood, it means that they're improving the way things are coded, and they're improving, like I said, pushing the MPC to its absolute limits. There's lots of speculation about there being new hardware coming. None of us actually really know. Well, there probably are some people that do know, the people that work at Akai, but none of us normal people would know whether any of this is true or not. I've seen a lot of speculation. Oh, look, of course it's going to happen, because they're not just going to stop producing MPCs. They're going to continue to improve, make bigger MPCs, more RAM, better processors, etc. But as things stand, they're continuing to push the MPC to its limits, which is amazing. You know, it's hats off to them, like I said, and again, hats off to them for the speed that they're putting the updates out and the fact that they're listening. I'm rambling now. Let's get into the new features. So with the update, this is version 3. Now, I've written a quick beat that I just put together quickly so that I can show the new features, so it's not just me sat looking at the camera and explaining them, and I can actually show them in real world situations. So first things first, I've got a quick track that I wrote this morning. I don't normally put all my drums on the same track, to be honest. I tend to split them up. I always have done way back since I first got an MPC 60 in the late 80s. 89, yeah, 89. So I normally go kick on one track, snare on one track, hi-hats on one track. But for this video, I've put all my drums on the same track. So there's drums, a couple of vocals, synth bass, and a kind of atmosphere sound. Deep house. Mid-90s master at work type sort of feel, dubby, deepy house. Deepy house? Is that a genre? No, I think deep house is the genre. Or perhaps deepy house could be a new genre. After all, they are reinventing genres every single day as we speak. In fact, they've probably just reinvented another genre. So there you go. That's the beat that I quickly made. Now, the reason why I put all the drums on one track is because I want to show one of the new features. Now, in version 2.15 and version 2 previously, we had the explode tracks. If you went into save, you had explode tracks as an option in audio mixdown. In here, it would just be underneath separate tracks. There was explode tracks. And what that did is it would enable you to bounce your tracks individually as multi-tracks, so that you could then drag them into your DAW and mix them down, or send them to a sound engineer for them to mix down. Really, really excellent function in the MPC. Just made things really, really easy. Now, when 3 came out, obviously people instantly recognized that in audio mixdown, there is no explode tracks anymore. However, and this was pointed out to me yesterday very kindly by Andy from MPC Bible, because I hadn't actually even noticed. If you go into the track edit, you can still explode tracks. That's always been there in version 3. Like I said, I completely missed it. So thanks, Andy. But it's slightly different. If you explode tracks in track edit, what you're doing is you're taking all of the MIDI on your track and you're splitting it into separate tracks, which is what's just happened there. So now you can see that all my drums are now split up into separate tracks. But all it's done, if we go into arrangement, you can see is it's broken it up into individual tracks. It hasn't bounced audio tracks. So you haven't exploded tracks and bounced audio. So it's just come out. We'll undo that. That takes a moment to undo, by the way. So it was a little bit different. They hadn't taken the audio mix down explode tracks into version 3. However, one of the new features which they've brought in now is if you go into save, you now have drum pads as stems. And what that does is it takes all my individual sounds. If we go into here, you can see, grid, there we go. That's all my individual drum sounds, my snares, my hats, etc., all on one track. Now if I go into here and I drum pad as stems, it will bounce each individual track into an individual WAV or AIF, whichever you want to choose, AIFF, sorry. It would bounce those into individual tracks so that you can then export them into your DAW or send them to a sound engineer to be mixed. Okay, now that's all very good. I love that. However, I do have one little issue, and some people are going to disagree with me on this, and some people are going to say I'm being pedantic, and some people are going to say it's just semantics. But let me explain why I have an issue with it. Drum pads as stems. Now, I've had an issue with this for quite some time with multiple companies and multiple plugins and the way that they're marketed to people. And this comes from, and I don't want this to sound patronizing, and if it does sound patronizing, I apologize, but it's not my intention. Stems and multi-tracks, they are two completely different things. They're not the same thing. If drum pads as stems here is bouncing individual tracks to individual multi-tracks. They're not bouncing stems. A stem is a collection of tracks that are mixed and will then be sent to a mastering engineer for stem mastering or to a mixing engineer for stem mixing. So let me give you an example of that. A drum stem would be all of your drums mixed together and sent to a mixing or mastering engineer as a drum stem. Or you could break it down. You could have your kick as a multi-track. You could or as a stem with some processing on it. The important part is it's the mixed kick drum. You could send your low perk, which would be your claps, your snares, your toms, etc. That would be the low perk stem. High perk stem would be your crash cymbals, your hi-hats. Synth stem would be all of your synths all mixed together as one track, I guess, but you would call it a stem because it's multiple tracks mixed together. So the idea would be that, for instance, I do stem mastering for clients sometimes. They'll ask me to quote them for stem mastering because it would be a little bit more than just a normal stereo track for mastering. And they will send me the drum stems, the bass stems, maybe vocal stems and other, or instruments, or different instruments like guitars, synths, full string orchestra, etc. It changes, but the point is some people will say it's semantics. It's just a word, stems, multi-tracks. But from a professional point of view, I have had situations very recently, actually, as well, where somebody has asked me to quote them for stem mastering, and I've given them a quote for stem mastering. They've then sent me multi-tracks. I have also had other people, actually multiple situations like that. And not just that, I've seen multiple situations like that only recently. And recently even I spoke to somebody through my channel that was asking about it and saying about stems and multi-tracks. So the reason why I have an issue with it from a professional viewpoint as a mastering engineer and as a mixing engineer is if people are thinking that a stem and a multi-track are exactly the same thing, then that's going to create issues. And so what I'm saying is we need to get out of the habit of saying stems are the same things as multi-tracks, or saying that a multi-track is a stem, because they're not. They're completely different. So this should really be drum pads as multis or drum pads as tracks. It shouldn't be drum pads as stems. Like I said, there's going to be a bunch of people, you can give me a thumbs down, by all means, I have no problem with it, who are going to say I'm being pedantic, or it's just semantics, Conan, it's just a word, it doesn't matter. But I hope that I've explained from a professional point of view, the stems and multi-tracks are two different things, and they can't get mixed up, because there can be issues if you're sending your work out to other engineers to mix or master, etc. So I've made a massive long thing about that, and it might seem like a small thing, but a request to Akai, let's just call it drum pads as multis or drum pads as tracks, and start getting people into the habit of not calling a multi-track a stem. It would just make everyone's life a lot easier. All right, I'm being selfish, it would make my life easier. So anyway, a brilliant function that they have reintroduced into 3, so that we have the ability to be able to bounce our tracks individually and export them to mix into in our DAW or send to another engineer. So great stuff, Akai. I love that. Brilliant. Okay, moving on. So what have we had? We've had the sample loading faster. Incidentally, just quickly, I just want to say this. I loaded a 20-second sample on 2.15 and on Beta 3.2 and on Beta 3.3. And I didn't make a video about it because it would have been a bit boring. But let's just say this way, it is quicker, it is snappier, it does load faster. It's not super faster, but it is faster. So if you work with long samples, that's going to be good because, you know, obviously time is money and you're going to cut down the amount of time you've sat there drinking your tea, doing your nails, whatever you do when you're waiting for things to load. You won't have to do as much of that. Or in some ways it could be bad because you won't have as much time to drink coffee and do your nails or whatever you do. So again, hats off to Akai for sorting that out. That's brilliant. Like I said, it means they're working underneath the hood. They're improving the algorithms. They're improving the coding. They're getting the most out of the machine. Brilliant. Lastly, the big new feature, something that we've been asking for. Well, is it a new feature? It's a new feature in 3. Mutes, track mutes working the way that people have been asking. Now, I've had multiple debates with people about track mutes and how people say that track mutes are working the way they're supposed to work because they're working the way that they would on an analog desk or in your DAW. When you press mute, it mutes everything. And there's not really an argument there because that is true. When you press mute on a desk or mute in your DAW, it will be post fader or post effects and it will just cut everything out. And that's fair enough. However, the thing is, with track mutes in an MPC, and I do know that there's lots of people that agree with this because I've had multiple conversations, the way that people use them live, for instance, is that in track mutes, they will be playing, they'll be playing live and they'll want to cut out their vocals or cut out a synth or whatever they're cutting out. It will have a tail on it or a play out or a ring or whatever you want to call it, or a delay, reverb tail, etc. And when they were hitting it in the new way that track mutes were in MPC 3, it would just cut in the way audio would, and they would lose the tail. So it wasn't working the way that they wanted it to work in a live situation or a jamming situation, etc. But also, when you put together a song and you want to use mutes that way as well, it was cutting off the tail. So people were saying, it's not working how I want it to work. Then you had the people in the other camp that were saying, well, it's working exactly how mutes should work. The thing that I was kind of on the fence about it a little bit, but I was kind of very, very slightly leaning towards the fact that in an MPC, okay, so in main, when we press mute, we're on the mixing desk and we press mute, we want it post effects, post fader, etc. We want it to cut off. Brilliant. That's what you want. But track mute is something that people tend to use in a live situation or when they're arranging. So therefore, it cutting off the audio and a tail and any kind of ring out, etc., is not really what you want. So on that side of things, I disagree with the people saying, well, mutes were still working properly because they weren't working how they used to work previously. Is this making sense or am I just completely rambling? Anyway, all that aside, it doesn't matter anymore because now Akai have listened to us and they have changed it, and the way that they've changed it is actually really, really cool because it's really easy. You can have event mute or you can have audio mute. If you have audio mute, it will just cut things off. So let's just say we'll play this track. Actually, I tell you, to make things easier, let's go into the vocal and we'll turn this multi-tap delay on. This is just for mixing purposes. I wouldn't have put this multi-tap delay on, so just to let you know. Okay, so listen to the hup type of vocal. You'll hear a multi-tap delay on it. Okay, so in track mute, if we've got it in event, when I mute it, it will mute the vocal, but you'll still have the tail from the delay and the reverb. So that's how a lot of people wanted mutes to work in the track mute page. And it didn't, but now it does. So awesome. However, what you can also do is you can have switch to audio and it cuts it off. Although it does still bring the tail back if you unmute it, as you can hear. So you've got the best of both worlds now, and what's really cool as well is you can really easily switch between them whilst you're playing. You can mute things in multiple different ways, and you'll see as well, if you can see it has slightly different icons for the mute MIDI and the mute audio. So that's really cool. Can get a bit confusing if you start muting twice and you have two icons on there. Perfect. You know, that's how a lot of people wanted mutes to work. So they were the three major new features: the track mutes, the exploding or drum pads to stems, drum pads to multi-tracks. Got to get multiple thumbs down for this because it is me being a bit pedantic, I guess. But I hope I explained the reasoning behind it. And then sample loading quicker. Now I'm just having a look on my screen now at the actual changelog. So they were the three major new features, although I would argue that they weren't exactly new. They were kind of perhaps improvements or reintroducing something that had been taken away. Either way, they're new in 3, and that's all good. Bug fixes, I'm not going to go through them one by one, but there's a few on there that I had issues with. I did have occasional hangs and startup and update. That's apparently been resolved. There's a bunch of things, the exporting looper to audio track, a few other things that I had issues with. Now, a lot of these were random, so time will tell whether they have actually been fixed. You know, I can't replicate the hanging on startup update problem because it would just literally happen randomly. But I have seen other people having that problem. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it has been resolved, it has been fixed. There was something with resolve an issue where certain MP3 files cause the TUI to hang. I've seen a few people have that issue. It just looks like overall they're sitting down and firstly they're listening to the community, and secondly they're continuing to work underneath the hood on multiple issues. We have to understand that this is a completely new firmware. This is my theory, and it's just my theory. There have been some things that haven't carried over from software 2 to firmware 2 to firmware 3. But what I think Akai were doing with this beta and this whole beta, the way that they've let us use it, the public beta, is they released kind of like a skeleton, and with the intention of bringing back the older functions, but perhaps in a new way. They introduced the new arranger window, but obviously this probably caused some problems with certain things in the coding. So I think with a bit of patience and the community continuing to highlight problems, highlight issues, keep making requests, they're gradually going to add back some of the things that are missing. I know people are going on about clips. I hear that virtually on a daily basis. It's probably something that is going to come back in some way. It might not be exactly the same. This is all speculation from me here. Obviously, these are theories, and it's human nature for us to do that. If we don't know definitively, then we'll start making things up in our heads. We all do it. Everyone does it. So they're just my theories anyway. So, overall, good stuff as far as I'm concerned. So there you have it. Version 3 of Beta 3. Let's call it Akai Firmware 3.3. Let's do that. That makes it easier. Then the next one will be 3.4. Unless they do that weird thing where they jump and it becomes 3.5. Anyway, overall, and I think I said it multiple times in the video, I'm really, really happy with this update. I love the way that they've listened. I love the way that they've brought back mutes and giving you the choice of event and audio. That's the best of both worlds, and it pleases everybody. And now hopefully we won't see as many arguments, debates, healthy debates in the forums, and everyone is going to be happy. The faster loading is brilliant, and obviously the exporting the drums, pads as stems. Akai, please, multi-tracks. Let's get into the habit. Let's get into the habit right now. Close your eyes, be zen, and think to yourself, they are multi-tracks. This is a stem, this is a multi-track. Just look up the definition online, it's all you have to do. The website for the plugins from iZotope gives a really, really good definition of it, actually, stems and multi-tracks. I think it's Jonathan Weiner, I think possibly a really, really amazing mastering engineer. I think he goes through the definitions, and he touches on a story very similar to mine where he'd quoted somebody for stem mastering, and then they sent a whole bunch of multi-tracks because they thought they were stems. So yeah, check that out. iZotope, great plugins as well. Where was I? Rambling. Oh yeah, look, just overall, I think it's a great update. I love the fact that Akai are coming thick and fast with these, and it's just making the MPC better and better. It's great for us guys that have been using it for a long time. It's great for people that are just starting. I mean, imagine if you literally bought an MPC yesterday and the first firmware that you've used is 3.3. You would be well happy. At least I would be. But also you're keeping the veterans and the slightly older, more finicky, pedantic nerds like myself happy. So that's all good. Thank you, Akai. Thanks for watching. This is the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. Until next time.